Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Weekly Blitz. 17 weeks of NFL football. We're almost at the end point of the regular season, but the playoffs start, and that's always the best time of the year. Jackson McIntyre, my co-host, is here with me today to recap the most important things of NFL Week 17. Jackson, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. The Vikings are steamrolling everybody. I guess the Packers kind of almost came back, but the most of the game it felt like a slaughter show until the very end. But yeah, no, it's a good weekend. It's always we're hitting that point where I'm just super antsy for playoffs. It feels like we're going into playoffs next week, but with some of these games, Vikings, Lions, Sunday Night Football headlining that. But yeah, no, we're looking forward to a great playoff season.
In NFL Week
Yeah.
17, there were a couple of things that I feel like are noteworthy to talk about. The Vikings and Packers game is one of them. The Vikings are now faced with a situation of, do they pay Darnold? Do they trade JJ McCarthy? Do they franchise tag Darnold? Do they keep JJ? We're going to get into that stuff.
Oh
And
yeah.
also, Monday Night Football just ended. We're recording this Monday night, and we just saw the Lions beat the 49ers. The Lions defense came alive in the second half. Brock Purdy played his best first half of the season, and then in the second half had multiple interceptions. And I think we can start there, but also want to
Yeah.
let the audience know that we will be doing all pro teams on this episode, and we also will be doing a little bit of a vibes meter for every single playoff team and rate their chances from 1 to 10 on how likely they are to win the Super Bowl. But
Yep.
first off, let's talk about the Niners. I feel like we've been hitting on this point for a while now, but the Brock Purdy second half collapse kind of just gives us more to talk about. If he didn't have that collapse in the second half, I don't think we're talking about it. But the contract is looming over his head. And I got these stats from Football Database. I don't have True Media yet. I'm not that established. Hopefully, one day
Not
I
yet.
will be. In 40 career starts, he has 2 game-winning drives and 2 fourth-quarter comebacks in his regular season career. Makes sense. The 49ers aren't down that much, especially last year. This year, they've been down more. His stats when trailing over the last 2 seasons: 11 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, now 14 interceptions because of the interception he threw to Kirby Joseph, the second one, and an 87.1 passer rating. What do these numbers tell you?
Look, man, I'm going to say something that I think is a little controversial. I think that I've made my opinion pretty clear on Brock Purdy to this point. Just that he's a good, not great quarterback who skated by with excellent talent and relied on an excellent skill set of timing and short to intermediate accuracy, which he has. And that's all he needed to do to within a great scheme, a great play caller, a scheme that generates, it manufactures separation for these receivers who really don't even need to be schemed open, at least when they're healthy. Ayuk, Kittle, Debo as a second slash third guy, all very capable of getting that separation and winning routes. But you mesh that with an excellent play caller and you get manufactured separation to go with guys who can win routes at a high level. And that's what we had for the last couple of years with him. And we come into this year, Ayuk gets hurt, and we see that Purdy is a huge liability right now. Anytime the Niners start trailing, the picks start accumulating. It's so apparent that he can't drive the ball. It flutters. He's got the weakest arm of any starting quarterback in the league, and it's really not close. Um, like it's it's like a Teddy Bridgewater-esque arm, if that. It's scary, and I'm at the point where I don't I don't know if I'm paying him 40. I don't know if I'm paying him a long-term contract at even the Baker contract is, I mean, I guess in this with for Shanahan maybe, but if I'm another team, I think you can definitely sell that for in Shanahan's scheme and get value, but especially with everyone coming back. But if I'm a different team and I'm looking to bring in a quarterback to elevate my team, and I don't have Shanahan, and I don't have that much talent, all that talent stacked around, like a 30 like a 35 million per year for 3-4 years, like that's tying my hands to a guy who isn't going to uplift anything here. I don't think he's going to fix it. I think he's going to be the problem. And I think it takes a very specific setting for him to be a good quarterback, but in that setting he can be a good quarterback and he can fit that bill better than a lot of quarterbacks can. But outside of that, it's the problems are magnified, and I'm very out on the Niners paying him anything close to this 55 million rumored number right now, and I think they should let him walk.
I'm with you. I don't think the 49ers should bring back Purdy unless it's on a team friendly deal. We're seeing the value of Brandon Ayuk right now because the
Yep.
49ers don't have a true separator on the outside. I know Jawan Jennings has had a pretty good season. He's not Brandon Ayuk when Ayuk is fully healthy. And Ayuk wasn't that good this year, but he also missed like the entirety of training camp, and
He was
receivers are
getting
going to
open.
start
He
slow.
just couldn't
Yes.
catch the ball. Yeah.
And he was getting open. You're absolutely right. And he was starting to play better as he got more reps in the games. And even early in the season, when the connection between Purdy and Ayuk wasn't there, on film, Ayuk was getting open. You're absolutely correct. But last year, he was one of the three best separators in the NFL. I
Yeah.
mean, he was awesome in his role. You look at his efficiency with the lack of volume that he had with targets and receptions, still able to crack 1,000 yards. He had an all-pro level season without volume, and that's wildly impressive. I think what we're seeing now is that, last year, the 49ers had the number one rushing attack in the NFL. And I think the difference between Purdy and a quarterback we're going to talk about later and Sam Darnold is the fact that the Vikings rushing offense has not been very good. It ranked 20th in EPA per rush last time I checked. And the Vikings rely on Sam Darnold to be their offense, to make high level throws down the field. And he has delivered. With Purdy, he plays within a positive game script. But when that positive game script isn't there, that's when he's most vulnerable. I used to think that Purdy was a really good quarterback. He's being elevated by the scheme, no doubt, but maybe he could succeed elsewhere. I'm starting to believe that this might just be Jimmy Garoppolo succeeding in San Fran, getting a contract elsewhere, and flaming out. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. And we are starting to see that even with this crazy production in 2023, there was a reason why he was the last pick in the draft.
Yeah.
It's a great story, but the tools, like you mentioned, he just doesn't have the tools of the top end quarterbacks when it comes to physical talent. And when defenses start getting a feel on the routes and you can't fit those passes into tighter windows, those start turning into interceptions. And we're kind of seeing those liabilities on display when the 49ers lose some of their supporting cast.
Yeah, I think that I want to push back a little on the Jimmy comparison, because I think a big issue with Jimmy was that he couldn't scramble at all. And Brock's ability to extend the plays adds a lot of value, even
And
though
make
the
big
field
plays.
and make big plays. Yeah, even though the field shrinks big time when he scrambles, because his noodle arm loses even more of that noodle when he's on the run, but he can still make accurate throws and buy time for his receivers to get open. And so I don't think that he would flame out the way that Jimmy did. I think that I think the worst case scenario for him is he kind of turns into like a bridge quarterback, like rich man's Gardner Minshew type ordeal. I think most likely he'll probably be re-signed and stay in San Fran. I don't think he's going to touch that 55 number, but I want to ask you, how much more let's say San Fran has the opportunity to sign Sam Darnold or Brock Purdy. How much more would you pay Sam than Brock? Like, what's your
Market
ceiling for
value.
paying?
Sam Darnold for me, if it's between Purdy or Darnold getting 50 million, I wouldn't even blink. I'd give it to Sam Darnold.
Okay, but say that Sam's cost is, let's say, like 52, and let's say Purdy's is 42.
I'd give it to Sam.
Same.
I think Sam is that talented. I think
Yeah.
Sam this year is proving he can make those high level plays, and those mistakes come with it because he still is one of the 10 leaders in turnover worthy plays this
Hmm.
year. Those mistakes have been there, but
Yep.
the Vikings, like I mentioned, don't have a great rushing game this year, and they lost their best offensive lineman in Christian Darrisaw. And since he's been out, Darnold has thrown 21 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. With
Hmm.
Brock Purdy, we're over here wondering if you lose one of your weapons,
Hmm.
how does the picture look? How does the painting look when one of the brushes is removed? So that's why I kind of feel hesitant over Brock Purdy. Um, I'm not sold. I'm just not sold, and I'm more sold on the idea of Kyle Shanahan being able to get magic in a bottle once again with a different quarterback. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
second quarterback in a row that he's made the entire world believe was a great quarterback. People scoff at the idea now, but there was a real Jimmy Garoppolo fan base back when he was at his peak. Back when in 2019, he was a quarterback for the Niners who went to the Super Bowl. There
Yeah.
was real buzz about him being
Hmm.
the next Brady, being Brady-esque,
Yeah.
or this being able to decipher defenses at such a high level.
Look
There
how good
was
he
that
is in the
hype.
pocket. Yeah.
Yes, there was hype for him as well. And this is the second quarterback that Shanahan has done it with. Granted, he failed with Trey Lance, and Trey Lance was a big, big bust. But I think it's better to take those risks rather than not take them.
Hmm. I think there were better risks to take in that draft personally, but yeah, I mean, the upside was there, and who's to say who's at fault there if Lance just wasn't able to process everything? But then maybe that's something that Shanahan should have picked up on before drafting him that high. Um,
I just think it's unfortunate the situation that the Niners are in because they've went to two Super Bowls in the Shanahan era. When they're healthy, they're almost a lock for the NFC Championship game, but they can't seem to get over the hump. And I feel bad for Shanahan because I think he's a victim of his own brilliance. He
yeah.
makes these guys look so good when what we should be saying is, wow, Shanahan is so amazing for making these quarterbacks look this good. Instead, we're blaming Shanahan for blowing leads and not finishing the job. When you look back
The
at
goalpost
2019,
moves when you're at the
yeah,
top. Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo missed a wide open throw to Emmanuel Sanders that would have won the Super Bowl for the
Yep.
49ers. It wasn't
Purdy
Kyle
missed one
Shanahan's
too,
fault.
just like that.
He did to Debo Samuel.
Yep.
It's not Shanahan's fault that the Chiefs converted a third and long, the famous Wasp play. It's not his fault. And 3rd and 2, you get a first down, the game is over. Purdy gets a blitz. Trent McDuffie's coming, and instead of looking on the inside, he looks at the outside and he misses Brandon Ayuk, who's wide open, and that would have been a first down. You know, I look at JT O'Sullivan, I look at the quarterback school. He's a big Brock Purdy fan, and even he was like, this is something that he's done all season. And in the Super Bowl, he didn't do it. So, you know, I just feel like quarterbacks or players don't make plays. Coaches get blamed for it. That's the deal in the NBA, NFL. You know, Mike Brown just got fired for that very reason in the
Yeah.
NBA after winning Coach of
Terrible.
the Year. So that's
Oh,
just how it goes. But I just think that this game kind of just shed more light and it rose more questions about Brock Purdy. You can see the Brock Purdy army is losing numbers right now.
oh yeah. It's the questions have been simmering for a while, but I think as we're getting closer to the offseason, the Niners fall to 6-10. Picks like in brutal fashion like this when he's trying to drive the ball in the second half of Sunday Night Football against the Lions, who for some reason played their starters. Um, it's adding fuel to the fire. So
And we'll speak on the
yeah.
lines because they're going to be part of this playoff ranking. The Vikings and Packers game, we don't have to talk about those two individual teams too much because we will talk about them in the
We'll get
playoff
to them. Yeah.
rankings. The Sam Darnold situation.
Yeah.
As a Vikings fan, where are you on the topic? What would you do if you were Quessy?
Yeah. So this is how I'm looking at this now. And all year long, I've said it probably 3-4 times on this podcast, but I've been very like, we're not re-signing Darnold. The Vikings are not going to re-sign Darnold. This is McCarthy's team. This is a 1-year thing for Darnold. He's bringing up his value and then he's going to leave in the open market. But we've hit this point now where there was like that early mid-season, like 3-4 game stretch where the cracks started to show. There was some questions like, where's he going to settle in? And he settled in like on a sharp spike up, and he's been ascending and ascending. And I mean, like the Vikings can call, Kevin O'Connell can call a very vertical, like Bruce Arians-esque style, reading deep to shallow on basically every route combination, where like you're not, if you get the alert outside and you've got that one-on-one, like that's every time that's the throw. If like you can do these like deep corner posts like as your first read and then read down from there, that's the Bruce Arians philosophy that Andrew Luck played in for so long, and that like it's very similar to kind of like the Joe Brady type offense where they're pushing the ball vertical, the Andy Reid stuff where you're although Andy Reid has kind of pulled it back in recent years, but he's kind of been opening it back up lately. But that type of offense is what you want to play because the whole field is accessible. There's no throw that Darnold can't make, and that means that there's no play that Kevin O'Connell can't call. And so I think we've hit this point where now the Vikings have to start asking, is this Darnold's ceiling? And this is Darnold's first year in a new offense. Normally, the second year in that new offense is much better than the first year. And so if there's even just like a marginal improvement, like you mentioned, like he's still near the top of the league and like turnover worthy plays, if there's some marginal processing improvement and that ticks down a little bit, now he's probably elite. Like he's in that, like dare I say, like he's in the Justin Herbert conversation at that point. Like if these turnover worthy plays pull down, like that's where he's knocking on the door. He's in the tier below that right now, but he's damn close, and he's not there because of the turnovers that he makes some pretty bad reads, and there was one late in the game where he almost threw the game away. And that happens now and then with him, and that happens with any quarterback. Even Tom Brady did that at times, but you need him to rein it in a bit. But I think the Vikings have to look at him like this might be JJ McCarthy's ceiling. And if this is JJ McCarthy's ceiling, then what are we doing letting him walk and taking on all of this risk? And I love JJ McCarthy, but you have to acknowledge there's risk in a 21 or 22-year-old quarterback developing and peaking at like what Darnold's been this year, or even a step beyond that, which Darnold, like I was just saying, could very well take. So like you can't just, the quarterback is such a tough position, and when you have someone that can be elite and is right there, and like there's a very realistic, like a slight further bump in his play and he's there, letting that walk is so ballsy. And I get it, like you trust Kevin O'Connell to develop McCarthy, and McCarthy he looked good, he looked really good, and he's got the talent. But like I think that you have to pay Darnold at this point. He's right in front of you. The end result of McCarthy is right here. He's 27. Like I think that's where we're at. And barring a playoff collapse, that's where I think I'm going to end with this. But if there's a collapse, this might need to be reevaluated. But for now, I mean, I'm bullish on him.
We need to see what he does in the playoffs. I think that's number one. I also think that we don't have to just evaluate everything solely on the playoffs, because Herbert in his first playoff game blew a 27-0 lead and didn't play that well in it. So I also don't think it can be the end all be all. I think this is an interesting conversation because Sam Darnold has the talent that warrants him to reach a certain ceiling that actually puts him in the upper echelon of quarterbacks. I think top 10. I don't know if I'd go as far to say in the elite tier, although I do think Sam Darnold possesses a lot of great
traits.
That
this year, though. I mean, he's been top 10.
I understand that.
So if you take him another 10, 15% better than this,
I understand that 100%. What I think, though, is Sam Darnold this year, the Vikings this year, their schedule, taking a look at it, it's solid, but
it's
how many
spectacular,
elite level defenses has Sam Darnold went up against? I can't really give you more than 7 or 8 that really he's went up against. I think it's probably even less than that. I think I'm being very generous. Off the top of my head, you have the Lions game, the Packers, 2 really good defenses, the Texans very early on. I would have to go back and look at it, but
You could say the Niners at the time, but that might be a
yeah,
stretch now that
I,
we have
I
all
think
this
with
data on them.
where I'm at with Sam Darnold is that he possesses so many high quality traits. I think his pocket presence is really good. He has a spectacular arm. He's able to extend plays. He's a playmaker. He's become very accurate in the system, even when throwing down the field. He has one of the highest A dots in the NFL, still very accurate. And that's something that we don't often see. Accuracy improves. Sam Darnold, before getting to Minnesota, was a career 61, 62% completion percentage quarterback. And now in KLC's system, he's completing 67% of his passes. So this has been an insane vouch
Yeah.
for KOC and the development plan for Sam Darnold. I think that KOC loves his players so much, specifically quarterbacks, because he was once a quarterback and he understands how the NFL works, that I think even if they were to re-sign Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy doesn't go anywhere. I don't think that KOC is going to have the heart to say, we're keeping Sam, JJ, we're trading you to the New York Jets.
How's that going to go over with JJ though? Because like he's ready. He can start next year. And
I think
if you
a
tag
knee
Sam,
injury gives you some leeway with redshirting him one more year.
right? Like if they tag Sam or something, but if you give Sam like a 3-4 year deal or something, I mean, like that's now you're kind of like a it's not a dumb situation like the Falcons where they walked into that, but you're kind of looking at that where you've got like a young quarterback locked up and a old or not old, but a long-term starter locked up as well.
I mean, Jordan Love sat for a long time. I
He
don't
did. What
think
was it,
if
3 years?
it was 3 years starting his fourth year,
It's a good point.
I don't think a 2-year deal for Sam is the worst thing in the world. I
But
don't
he
know if
can get
any
more.
team, I don't know if any team's going to commit 3 to 4 years to Sam guaranteed.
They might. I think they might do. He can get 4 with like an out after 3. I don't
I
think you're
think
getting
it would
4
be the
full.
Kirk contract.
Yeah,
2 years, 100
maybe
million
2.
guaranteed. Third year, you get an out. And I think that would be the best case scenario for the Vikings. But all the points that you listed were valid. Sam Darnold has the talent to be a solidified top 10 quarterback in the league. I think if you were to measure and list out the top most talented throwers of the football, Sam Darnold would easily crack the top 10. He's a solidified quarterback in the top 10. It is easy, but there is also a lot of risk involved. And I understand not wanting to let this walk away from you, because this isn't a Case Keenum situation, who ironically also revived his career with the Vikings. Darnold actually has a talent, and
Or
I
an Alex
understand
Smith.
everybody saying, this is our guy. You know, we thought he was just going to be a friend, but he turned to be a lover.
Yeah.
Like Sam Darnold is now somebody that you really want to be the face of the Vikings. You see how the locker room responds to him. They are all behind him and they have his back. It just depends on what the market is going to be. I think that's the most important factor. I've heard a lot of teams out there. You have the 49ers, maybe if they want to get rid of Brock and bring in Sam, that's a possibility. The Rams, if Stafford's a little bit older and maybe they want to go young, that's a possibility. Maybe, like, you know, there's a lot of teams, but one thing I am certain of, I don't think Sam Darnold is going to take money for the sake of it. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's going back to the Jets. I don't think he's going to the Raiders or the Titans. I think he understands the importance of a situation, and I think wherever he goes, he will go or remain in a good situation.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of like comparisons on Twitter or X of people talking about kind of comparing this to the Alex Smith and Mahomes situation, but this is not that. That situation was something where Alex Smith couldn't make the big boy throws, and you knew Mahomes could. And so you let Alex Smith walk so that you have this guy who can come in that can make all of the throws that Alex Smith couldn't make. And the Chiefs were like good, but they weren't able to win those big playoff games because of Alex Smith's limited skill set. And as soon as you swap that out with Mahomes, now those big throws start getting made, and there's a whole change in how those games go. But like Sam Darnold is the big boy throw guy. Like this isn't this like he is that. JJ McCarthy also can be that, but like you're not like letting a guy go to expand the offense and bring a new like skill set into it. And also Alex Smith was older and Darnold's 27, but I think that's another thing. I mean, the logic for letting Sam walk is that you can pay like three good free agents or re-sign like Byron Murphy and pay Milton Williams and pay a guard or something, all for the same cost it would take to bring in Sam Darnold. And then you could argue, well, if JJ McCarthy is 75-80% as good as Sam Darnold, then maybe that's worth it with all of those extra players around. And yeah, maybe, but it's also the most important position in sports, and the injury did happen, and that is another risk factor here. And like we have to assess the risk on McCarthy's side. And so you've got some health issues that have come up in the last few months. And on top of that, you've got the natural development risk that any young quarterback has to overcome to show that they belong in this league. So
I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to let Sam walk. I wouldn't be able to do it. With the way that he's played, I couldn't. Yeah. I couldn't. I really couldn't. Because like you mentioned, like he's doing some special stuff this year. He's going above and beyond the system and making some high level throws down the field. And he's right there. He's 27 years old. This is a long-term quarterback answer. And if this is not even his ceiling, if he can get even better from this, the odds of JJ reaching this, listen, I like JJ a lot as a prospect. Mm-hmm. Did I envision him becoming one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league? I did not. I envisioned him more as a game manager, great within a system. I would have to see more expanded around him to see if he can reach another level.
I think he's got the talent to reach that level. I'm very high on McCarthy, but
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But Darnold is doing it, and even a marginal tick below in quarterback play is a big difference.
Yeah.
Like Jared Goff is a phenomenal quarterback, but going from Jared Goff to Justin Herbert
or Mahomes or Josh Allen.
Yes, it's just a different level that you can get to, you can tap into when you have one of those dudes. And it's all about if Sam is one of those dudes, and I think the playoffs will give us more clarity on that. NFL playoff rankings.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this by the whole NFL, or you want to split it into AFC and NFC?
I ranked mine just based on the league, based on who I am most confident in.
We're on the same page then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number one, is it are we going 14-1 or are we going 1-14?
Let's start with the top, and I'll open up with KC.
KC's mine too. KC's mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think my main reasoning is like their weapons have come a long way. I remember like 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks ago, we were talking about how the weapons were struggling and Worthy was not showing up, and there were all of these issues. And then they traded for Hopkins, which gave them like a secondary guy to Kelsey who can make the catches over the middle, to win and can catch tough contested balls. And then Worthy started to develop, and he's always going to be a threat over the top, but he's been working, like, obviously the gadget plays, but he's been working over the middle. He's been winning some routes. Like, he looks good right now. And then you get Hollywood back, and that was kind of like a Christmas present. Like, for a while, I think that the general sentiment was like maybe, but probably not this year. And he's back, and that's another big play threat. And they all have unique skill sets, and Andy Reid can do so much with the four of them. And Patrick Mahomes has started playing much better now. His last few games have been excellent. Like, he was struggling earlier in the year when the weapons weren't there, and now he's got some guys that can catch the ball and get open a little bit, and he's back. Pacheco's back. I mean, I'm very bullish on this offense. The defense is what it is. It's it kind of is what it is. They're not awful, but they're bad-ish. And maybe in playoffs they'll step it up a little bit, but the idea is going to just be outscore the other team. And Mahomes is the best equipped quarterback in the league to do that in the playoffs.
The idea of the Chiefs defense versus what it is in my brain are completely opposite. People look at the Chiefs defensive numbers elite in terms of points allowed. They like rank within the top 5. They still have one of the
Yeah.
best EPA per plays, but that's not filtering out after Justin Watson or Jalen Watson, I should say, got hurt. Like, he was a
Yep.
big part of their success because Trent McDuffie, who's an all-pro corner, was then complemented with Jalen Watson, who was a very high level corner and breaking out in his own right. And losing that, they've gotten some development from their secondary. George Karlaftis has come alive. He had a great game without Chris Jones against the Steelers. So I think the defense is playing a little bit better, but I still have major concerns about their defense. I think
Yep.
if they face the Ravens or the Bills, it's going to be a shootout. That's what I'm envisioning. Their offense with Xavier Worthy getting involved, it's added a different element. But the left tackle situation being fixed is the biggest reason why I like them again. Joe Tooney moved into left tackle, and it's so funny how it happened. The first game he moved out to left tackle was against Myles Garrett. They didn't ease him into it at all. They just said, okay, here, you're going up against the best edge rusher in the league. Here you go. And it was his worst game. He allowed 10 pressures in that game at left tackle. And if you look at his PFF grade in the 3 games that he started at left tackle, it's not much different than Wanya Morris. The difference is the Browns game is really setting him back because he was awful in it, but he's allowed 0 sacks.
Everyone looks awful against Myles Garrett.
100%. Yeah. And even though it looks unnatural because he's not a left tackle, he's a guard, I still think he's just so much better than what they had previously. He can still get beat by bull rush moves. He's not the strongest at left tackle, especially going up against bigger defenders, but he's agile. And if he can get chip help and if he can kind of maneuver those defensive players around the edge and kind of create that kind of curved wall around Mahomes in the pocket, I feel like that's when he's at his best. So that's why I'm higher on the Chiefs. Just the left tackle situation being fixed. I don't think Mahomes is as uncomfortable in the pocket with his footwork anymore as he was early in the season. And the defense, Spags is always going to cook up a certain scheme, a certain simulated pressure at the right time. They've been great against the run all year long, and if you can get offenses,
they played great against the Steelers. I should give them credit for that.
Yes, they had a step on all of the concepts that they were running. And Spags, if you can stop the running, you can get offenses into 3rd and long situations. That's kind of where he wants to live. So, the Chiefs are still number 1. A lot of the question marks I had about them, they have shored all of them up, and they've patched them to the point where I'm not really that worried about it at all going into the playoffs.
Yeah, other than like the Eagles and the Vikings, I guess the Ravens are kind of up in the air. We'll talk more about that, but their defensive turnaround, which has happened, but they were.
Who's your number 2?
Yeah, let's do that. So I've got the Eagles at number 2.
I got the Eagles too. I think they're the most talented team in the NFL.
Yeah, so we ranked these teams out of 10. I gave the Chiefs a 10, 10 being like the most likely to win the Super Bowl. I'm very confident that they have the best shot to do that. But the Eagles I gave a 9, and I also gave the Bills a 9. So I kind of tied the two of them. The Eagles I would have had a little bit higher if not for these questions at quarterback right now. So I feel like Hurts isn't a serious threat to like miss a playoff game. I think he'll be back, but he also wasn't playing that well before he got hurt. And so I think it was really important for him to find a rhythm. And in middle of the season, he started slow, then he was playing really well middle of the season, and then he kind of tailed off. And I think it was really important for him to get back in that rhythm right before playoffs, and he's not going to get the chance to here. If for whatever reason he's not back, I think that Tanner McKee should be the guy. I mean, Kenny Pickett is not like it's tough out there.
McKee is good.
McKee's good. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if it was draft pedigree or like what, but like McKee balled out in preseason, and then they're like, "Oh, look, this former first round pick is available. We'll snag him, and he'll be our backup." And I don't know, like, especially after that first game where he came in and just stunk it up, missing easy throws all game. Like I
The lack of
yeah,
arm strength is on display with him. Like
yeah.
when the ball is out of his hands, it just dies. It
Yeah.
just looks so slow
And
getting
sometimes
to the
it doesn't come out
receiver.
of his hand. You saw that
Yeah, I did. But
sometimes the
didn't
ball just
didn't you
takes him to the
hear?
ground.
Didn't you hear that Jalen Hurts, he wasn't playing well because he was taking a step back. He said,
Mhm.
"Listen, guys, you don't need me today. I don't have to play 100%. Saquon can lead us to victory, and I don't need to make all these throws because this team is so good. I want everybody else to do well around me."
Those are the funniest arguments. Like as if he's like actually intentionally missing a slant route or like throwing it to the defense because he wants to see if they can come back after like give that shit a rest. But
But no, listen, I think the Eagles are the most talented roster in the NFL, and
yeah.
the only way I can see them losing in the playoffs is if Jalen Hurts has a bad game. That's really the
Yeah.
only way I can see it. And
Turnovers, yeah.
I'm not even talking about an average game. I am
Mhm.
talking about a visibly bad game. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about
You don't
because
notice when he's average. You
no,
notice when he's really bad.
the Eagles are so talented. There's no hole on their roster. Their
Yep.
offensive line is stacked. They have elite receivers. Their defense, the defensive line, the linebackers, the secondary, it's flooded with talent. Jalen Hurts has to literally play like Kenny Pickett, and I still think it'd be a one possession game. That's how talented the Eagles are. So if Hurts manages to take his game to another level and play like a top 10 quarterback, I actually think the Eagles are the 10 out of 10 for me in terms of winning
Yeah.
it all. I don't see any team beating the Eagles if they're at their best, 100% their best brand of football. I really don't see any team beating them. The Chiefs, to me, are like an 8 out of 10 because I think the Bills and the Ravens they have just as good of a chance at making it out the AFC as the Chiefs. I think
Yeah.
in the NFC, when you stack up the other teams against the Eagles, a couple things have to break their way. Where Philly's not relying on as much luck for them for things to break their way. So the Eagles, I'm kind of at like a 9.5 out of 10, and the 0.5 is like, is Hurts gonna be average? Is he gonna be good?
Yeah.
Like, that's really the question mark for me.
Yeah, I think that what you add in their matchup in the NFC with like likely either the Vikings or the Lions um, at some point, those two being the biggest threats to knock them off. But I think they match up really well against the Vikings. The Vikings are very weak at the interior offensive line spot. That is like the biggest weakness for them. Garrett Bradbury is god awful at center.
And that's the Eagles'
Um,
biggest strength.
Blake Brandel is very mediocre at left guard, and then Reisner's now playing decent football at right guard, but not solid football. But it's still a weakness. And yeah, the Eagles are dominant at their interior defensive line spot, and like with stunts too back inside. I mean, Josh Sweat is blowing up Garrett Bradbury. Garrett Bradbury is a traffic cone, and that is going to be a spot that's going to be really tough for the Vikings to overcome on offense. And same thing on the opposite side of the ball. They've got these small linebackers and very mediocre interior defensive linemen. And the Eagles' offensive line are people movers. They move bodies right at the snap, and then they get to the second level. And the Vikings linebackers do well when they can flow and win with speed. But when these Eagles linemen are getting to the second level right after the snap, they're not really able to do that. And if you can get hands on Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace, you're moving them. Like there's not a whole lot of
Yeah.
resistance there.
Blake
And
Cashman's
then
undersized.
yeah, and so it's those two areas are the Eagles' strengths, their greatest strengths, their offensive line, and their whole defense is kind of a strength, but like their defensive line is excellent, and those two are they're primed to capitalize on the Vikings' weaknesses in the biggest way possible. And for that reason, like I'm terrified as a Viking fan for running into the Eagles and how that's going to look. It might get ugly. And that also is a boost to the Eagles, because if you match up well with the next best team, and I do think the Vikings at this point after all these Lions injuries are the second best team in the NFC. I mean, your chances go up of getting to the Super Bowl.
My number 3 team is the Baltimore Ravens. Think the defensive turnaround since moving Kyle Hamilton to safety. He's playing more snaps there. Darius Washington starting over Marcus Williams now, who got benched, who was playing poorly. And Washington is making a ton of plays at the safety spot. I think the Ravens just have an offense that is unstoppable with Derrick Henry, and when he gets going,
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is playing the best of any quarterback this year when I watch him on tape. And if that defense starts to play better, which they have been playing better, this is a complete team. We saw how it looked like when the Ravens matched up with the Bills. They pushed them around. And I kind of think the Bills defense is susceptible to bad playoff performances. So the Ravens to me are number 3. I think they're the most dangerous team, and they have the most effective rushing attack outside of the Eagles in the NFL. And you could even say it might be just as good, if not better than the Eagles, because of the Lamar Jackson factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that adds a gap. So they're basically blocking with one extra lineman out there every time that read option is going on. And I had the Ravens just a tick behind the Bills. I am still, despite the defensive turnarounds, I'm still a little concerned just based on how much bad tape they put out there earlier in the year. I'm not saying they're going to play bad, but I think there's a risk for that. The Bills defense is also very sketchy, but I trust Josh Allen more in the playoffs right now than I do Lamar.
That's fair.
Lamar's just got to show it. He's been phenomenal all season. This has been by far his best year as a thrower. And I think that is very likely to transfer or translate into the playoffs, especially with this threat now of Derrick Henry. Like, you're opening up the pass game a lot more. But pitting that with the Bills, like, my money's on Josh Allen there. And Joe Brady's scheme has been revolutionary in maximizing Josh Allen and just this offense in general. Joe Brady would be getting a lot more head coaching buzz right now if Ben Johnson did not exist. But because Ben Johnson does exist, the praise there has been a lot quieter than I think it should be. But I think it'll start cooking up in playoff time. But there's legit weapons on Buffalo's offense at receiver now. Amari Cooper just had an awesome contested catch, touchdown grab downfield. Keon Coleman has shown a lot this year. Khalil Shakir making the tough grabs all season over the middle of the field. Those tough 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 5 grabs where he's getting slammed while he catches it. But they have everything that they need. I think this is the best offense that Josh Allen has had in terms of everything, scheme and playmakers. And I gravitate to that a little more than I do to the Ravens, but the Ravens are a team no one wants to play, and they've certainly got a shot here too. I had them right behind the Vikings.
My 3 and 4 was the Ravens and Bills. You spoke a lot on the Bills. I agree with a lot of the sentiments. You have the Vikings over the Ravens.
Slightly. 8.5 I gave the Vikings, and 8 I gave the Ravens.
Okay.
NFC is a bit easier.
I see that.
They're coming in sizzling. Like,
I don't know if over the Ravens. That's a little bit crazy to me.
I trust the defense more, and I trust Kevin O'Connell more as a head coach.
If they matched up in the Super Bowl, who's your pick?
Oh man. Just thinking about matchups, and I mean, Vikings have 2 of the best linebackers to spy and keep Lamar in check, so that's a plus matchup. I mean, no one's going to do great against Lamar, but that's step 1 of defending him, is having athletic linebackers. Edge defenders are pretty damn athletic as well. I would probably go Vikings.
Okay.
Not confidently.
I feel that. The Vikings are my 5th team. I think they are the second best team in the NFC. And while I do think they do have some matchup problems if they go up against the Eagles, part of me kind of trusts Brian Flores to
Yeah.
cook up a lot of pressure packages and make Hurts hold on to the ball
Hmm.
longer than he wants. If there's somebody that I trust to scheme around a great offensive line, it is Brian Flores. And part
Hmm.
of the allure with the Vikings is they have two incredible coaches on each side of the ball. They have a defense that's playing phenomenal. They're healthy. And on offense, Sam Darnold is really playing like a dude. And if you have that, that is a recipe for being a Super Bowl team. So for me, the Vikings are that fifth team to me. Like
Yeah.
I'm confident in them. I'd probably give them like a 7. That's where I'm
Addison's
at with
play
them.
lately too has been
Yes,
moving. Like he has been a big needle mover and he's been dominant. This kind of
he's
reminds me of like
awesome.
Calvin Ridley in the early Falcons days, similar type of a weapon. But
Yeah,
um,
this is one of the best
yeah,
wide receiver duos in the NFL, and
yeah,
Justin
Hawkinson
Jefferson
back. Yeah,
is going to warrant so much attention in whatever matchup that he's in. So the
Hawkinson
Vikings are
looks like
fifth
he
for me.
never tore his ACL either. He's moving really
Yeah,
well right now.
no, yeah, the Vikings are getting healthy at the right time. I can definitely see it. I think this is a Super Bowl team, and if things have to go through U.S. Bank Stadium, that crowd's going to be rocking.
Oh yeah, it's a fun place.
Number 6, because number 5 you had the Ravens,
Hmm.
I believe. Number
Yep.
6, I'm not giving up just yet. It's the Green Bay Packers. That's where I have the Packers.
Whoa.
I
So
have the
you think
Packers
they
high.
jumped Detroit?
I think they jumped Detroit. I have too much question marks about the Lions defense. Even though I could argue in favor of Detroit, I have Detroit a spot lower. In
Okay.
favor of Detroit, I can argue that I trust their offensive operation 100 times more than the Packers' offensive operation. And I
Hmm.
trust them to be consistent for both halves, not just one half. And I think that's where the Packers land. There's been this fraudulent label on the Packers this season because they've lost to the Eagles, they lost to the Vikings twice, they lost to the Lions twice. All 5 of their losses have been against teams that are 13 win teams or better. Let's just keep that in
Hmm.
mind. Like
Hmm.
the Packers aren't losing to regular 500 teams. I think the difference between the Packers and a team like the Dolphins last year is that the Dolphins outside of the Cowboys literally could not beat any team that had a 500 record. The Packers have beaten teams with a 500 record. They've beaten the Texans. They have beaten the Rams. They beat the Seahawks. It's not like the Packers have beaten nobody. They just haven't beaten the elite of the elite tiers. It's like saying,
Hmm.
yeah, the Rams are fraudulent because they lost to the Eagles.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. In 4 of the 5 games that the Packers lost were one score losses. I know they came alive late, but one more defensive stop in any of those games, the offense has a chance to do something and come back and maybe win those games. So I'm not out on the Packers because they do have some injuries on defense.
Yeah.
I trust
Jair.
their defense. Jair comes back. Evan Williams comes back. Jeff Hafley's doing an amazing job. If this offense can click for 2 halves, which I don't think is out of the question, I still believe in the Packers as a sneaky team. And, I see the matchup right now, the current playoff matchup is the Eagles and the Packers. I think the Eagles are a better team, but the Packers are probably the last team I want to face in the first round. They're the last team. If it's between the Rams, Commanders, and Packers, I'd rather face the Commanders and Rams over the Packers. I think the Packers are still legit.
Yeah. I had them a bit lower. I had them tied behind, well, so I had the Lions right there at what was it, 5 or 6 or whatever it was. After that I had the Chargers. I think that the Chargers are actually, let me, before I get on the Chargers, let me talk a little Packers. The main thing that sticks out to me when I watch that A22 is, or just all season, not a specific game, is how close so many throws are. Like fingertips, like there's not quite enough separation, just diving and like not able to make a tough grab. Like every game, there's so many plays like that. And I just think about like what would this look like if like Jordan Love had an actual like dog, if he had like a top 8, top 10 receiver out there. The Packers never draft receivers really, but they've got this weird like mix of like four guys who are all very mid, and they all have a different skill set. Like Watson is really fast and really big, but he can't fucking catch the ball, and he gets hurt every other game. Like Dow
Jaden Reed is more of like a gadget guy, but
gadgety.
he's not a true man beater.
He can't get open, and he gets like bullied on his routes, like on his stems. Like he'll get these little like shoulder shoves that don't even look that aggressive, and his whole route will get thrown off course. Romeo Daubs is like just the most average guy at every single thing of
And
being
he's
a
like their
receiver.
most reliable guy.
Yeah, he's like a little bit of juice in his route, so you can solid route runner, very very unspectacular.
And Wicks
like,
is the best, but he doesn't catch.
Yeah, and Tucker is probably like their most reliable guy, but he's good. He's pretty good. But like still, it's just a mix of a bunch of guys who are not gonna really impress you. And Wicks, yeah, Wicks is the other guy who like he gets open and he just can't catch the ball either. But
maybe outside of Jaden Reed, the Packers just have all of their receivers would be like the third best receiver on all of these top contending teams. Like, is Jaden Reed better than Xavier Worthy? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think
you can do a lot more with Worthy.
I think Worthy might be a little bit better. He has some real route running chops. Look at the Eagles. I mean, it's, they have a dominant duo, but look at the Lions. Jamison Williams, has he now walked into the territory where he might be the best receiver out of all the guys the Packers have? I don't think it's that crazy with how well Jamison has been playing.
He's just like a better Christian Watson. Like he's not as tall, but he's little bit faster, and like he catches the ball more and a little bit of a better route runner. But yeah, so I worry about their pass rush. I worry about their weapons not getting open, and their offensive line is really good, but on the defensive side of the ball, injuries and pass rush. It's just, if you can't rush the passer, it doesn't matter if you have good coverage, and vice versa. If you don't have good coverage, it doesn't matter if you can rush the passer. Those two things need to be married, just like the Eagles did, where they're dominant in both equals dominant defense. Vikings, same thing. They're not dominant in either, but they're very good in both, and it makes them a very good defense. So going back though to the Lions, it's all about injuries. I probably would have had them tied with like the Chiefs and the Eagles, but
same.
Like at this point, I mean, we're down so many guys out there, and
Aleem McNeil,
you're solely relying on a shootout where you outscore the other team, and they can do that, but it's risky business, like in the playoffs, and you're going to be playing a better defense than you're fielding. And when you run into a team like the Vikings, who have an offense that is very good, maybe not quite as high powered as your offense, but their defense is significantly better than your defense. Now it's just where push comes to shove, and who turns the ball over more. And so I think they're very prone to, like, they might lose to a surprising team. If they lose to the Vikings, which I think there's a better chance than not that they lose this upcoming Sunday, and they end up playing like Commanders or I don't know how that would slot in. They'd be the 5th seed, so they'd play 4, right? And that would be,
so they'd pay the Buccaneers.
Okay, well,
or the Buccaneers or the Rams. It'd be one of those teams.
Yeah, the Rams. There you go. I mean, like, if the Rams bounce the Lions, like, because the Lions defense just can't stop them, and Matthew Stafford gets on a heater, and Puka's catching everything, and Cooper Kupp shows up, like, that can happen now because your defense isn't reliable enough to keep you out of shootouts, and. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at with them. So I think they're a little bit behind all the teams I put ahead of them.
They dropped down because of injuries a lot. Now, after the Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bills, Vikings, Packers, Lions, I had the Packers high. You had them lower. You had the Chargers high.
Yeah. I think the Chargers are like there's a tier break. They're definitely the next tier after that Lions mark, who
Okay.
Lions are kind of in the tier of their own, I think. But I do think the Chargers are like my dark horse, where there's real problems, and you can list all of them, but I think that they're the team that nobody wants to play. Like, there's obviously no one wants to play the Eagles, but like other than like those obvious teams, like I think the Chargers are the team that like their defense has been pretty good-ish for the most part. They can dominate in a day on a day. They can also get exposed, but they can show up. Um, Justin Herbert might just ball out. And if Will Disley isn't dropping everything that comes within 5 yards of him, then and Lad McConkey, who's clearly he's emerged as a strong wide receiver one at this point. Like they have the A1, they don't have depth at all. But you've got a guy that can make these big plays. And if Quentin Johnson just shows up a little bit,
He
he
has a good
doesn't
game.
just has a good
Four
game.
for
Like
40.
yeah, or 2 for 65 or something. Like um and they're running the ball well. And if Dobbins is like does his thing, like I think that there's a shot. And if the interior line is not a absolute game wrecker in all the wrong ways possible, um I think they're a tough out. And
Yeah.
that sometimes being a tough out, you take it game by game, and all of a sudden they're in the AFC Championship. Like it happens, and uh, we'll see. But
Yeah, there's an energy around the Chargers that I really like this year. And Herbert, we know how great he is. I think they are firmly the fourth best team in the AFC. They're better
yeah,
than the Steelers, they're better than the Texans, and they're better than the Broncos.
yeah,
So the Chargers, to me, they're that next tier for sure. After the Lions, ahead of the other teams, even ahead of the Chargers, the team that I had, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm buying this. I'm buying this. Elite offensive line. They can run the ball. Bucky Irving has 1,600 yards from scrimmage this year, which is
but
insane. Yeah,
The Cowboys fucked them up.
they did. The Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield is playing well. You have Mike Evans. You have Kate Otten. The defense is getting a little bit healthier, and they are vulnerable, and they have leaks and cracks. But Todd Bowles is also a pretty good DC, and he can pressure you a lot. And uh, the only team you can say in the NFC that has the Eagles number is the Bucks. Like if the Bucks face the Eagles, you're an Eagles fan. You're like, oh shit, fuck the Bucks. Like they've kind of given us a run for our money these last few times we've played them. So
Yeah.
I think the Bucks, they're a sneaky team for me. Just below them, I had the Rams. I'm not a big believer in the Rams because
Yeah.
I know the narrative around them is it's Stafford and McVay. They can beat anybody. They can get hot. They can go to the chip. Last year, we said it, and they lost in the first round in a shootout, granted, but the defense has gotten better, but against better offenses, it still is a very bad defense. And I don't like the way the offense has been playing. They were a Trey McBride ball bouncing off his face mask away from losing to the Cardinals. They were in a dogfight for the majority of the game against the Jets. And then they barely beat the 49ers in a game where we gave shit to Brock Purdy for. Matthew Stafford was probably just as fucking bad. So it's like,
he's been pretty bad this year.
Yeah, the last three games, the Rams offense, to me, it hasn't looked electric. They've had good moments, but it hasn't looked like the number one ranked offense, which it was last year heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I had the Rams and the Commanders tied for the next spot after the Chargers. Same. I echo all your statements on the Rams there. Stafford has definitely taken a step backwards this year. The arm seems to still be there though. His decision making has just been very extra. Like he's always kind of had moments where he throws boneheaded picks, but they've been louder this year.
He led the league in pick sixes when they won the Super Bowl in 2021.
Yeah, I mean it's followed him, but this year the volume of them has been high. I think that he's also been a bit more erratic with his accuracy. I think the defense, who has played above expectations, they lack talent, and those type of defenses get exposed in playoffs with more precise game planning and against better teams. So I just all of it together. I mean, even if Stafford has a good game, which he's very capable of having, I think the defense could easily be the death of them, and there's too many cracks in this team. Um, they're not a team you want to play. You don't look at the schedule and get excited about playing the Rams because they are dangerous. But yeah, I'm not sold on them making a run. My next team was the Commanders, who I think they're also kind of a dark horse. Their defense sucks. It's bad, but anytime you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels who can just completely take over a game, like he can just be the best player in a game for the whole game. And if he avoids mistakes, that's fucking scary. And you have to worry about so much game planning with him. Like you need all kinds of scramble rules and all kinds of pocket containment rules. And then he breaks it, and now all that game planning was for nothing. And the way he's been throwing the ball, like I don't think they're going to go on a real run or anything either, but like they're another team where I think they can win a game. They can beat someone who they're a 6-point underdog against. And they're going to be a fun team to watch. Jaden's first playoff game. I'm looking forward to that. So
I am. I think the Commanders, electric offense, the defense, I don't trust at all. But if
yeah,
they get hot, maybe they can win one or two. The LA
yeah.
Chargers were my next team. You kind of spoke a lot about them, so I don't have to go too in depth on that. After the Chargers, I think we're on like our final three teams.
Yeah, I did everyone who's even potentially still in the mix. So I've got like the
Okay.
Dolphins. I got the Bengals ranked on here. So
Okay, for me, I
yeah,
didn't rank it that way because I have little optimism that the Bengals are going to make it because
yeah,
they need a Dolphins loss and they need a Broncos loss, and the
yeah.
Dolphins need a Broncos loss, and that's it. They got to win their game too, and I just don't know if the Broncos are going to lose.
No, yeah, the Chiefs are benching players. I was just thinking of if they get in, how confident am I that they can win it? I actually had the Bengals as my next team above the Steelers and above the Texans as well.
That makes sense. The
Yep,
Texans are my last team. I
yep.
don't trust them at all. Everything I've seen this year, I think the Broncos would go in there and I think they'd kick their ass. I think that defense would give CJ Stroud a lot of trouble. I think Pastor Tam would do a great job on Nico Collins. And I think their offense, that's going to be a tough matchup against the Texans defense. I'll tell you that much. But,
Hmm.
I just trust them a little bit more than I do the Texans. So I'd rank it Steelers, Broncos, and Texans, my last three. And those are like a lot of shit has to break their way for them to be even remotely in the conversation.
Yeah, Steelers are just a team that's completely fallen apart. The offense burns way too many plays on inefficient run plays. Russ's play has declined from plus starter to just a mediocre kind of placeholder guy who basically every game now, there's multiple points in the game where I'm wondering if they'd be better off just putting Justin Fields back in the game. Um, the defense is just all right. Far from elite, far from even very good. You could argue they're solid, I think, but I don't think I'd push back on anything more than solid. The coverage gets shredded. They've got a good pass rush, but other than Peyton Wilson, the linebackers can't really cover. There's too many angles to expose it, and then the offense comes out and moves the ball, run, pass, punts, and you're right back out there against a tired defense, and that's how the last few games for them have gone. So going into the playoffs, this is not how you want to stumble. They're stumbling into the playoffs, and this is not how you want to go into it. Texans, yeah. I mean, the line is just Stroud has regressed, and the line is awful. The receiving course crippled. Good luck to them. And the Bucks, I actually have down there with the Texans as well. I'm just not a huge believer in Baker right now. I think he's solid, but I think when you mix him in with all these other quarterbacks, you're at an immediate disadvantage there. The line is good. Mike Evans has been playing really well. Don't love the defense personally, but yeah.
You're not on the Baker train, I see.
He's solid. I just I'm looking around at who like anyone like if they play like who am I? I don't know. I don't think I'm picking the Bucks to beat anyone in the NFC.
You don't think they could beat the Commanders? And
They
probably,
can
yeah, that could be a potential matchup.
if that's an even money line. I'm taking the Commanders though. So
Bucks or Rams?
Rams.
I see. I see. I'm a little
Yeah.
bit higher on the Bucks. I think they're going to win
Yeah.
a playoff game here. Yeah,
All
I do.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's
We'll
see.
see. Yeah.
Baker, the Baker train. Um, we have our all pro teams, first team only that we're going to mention, but there's going to be some like players we probably mention as we're mentioning the first
Hmm.
teamers. So, you can just put two and two together to probably make the second team at
Yep.
that point. So, NFL first team all pros. Let's start with the offense.
Yeah.
For quarterback, I have Lamar Jackson.
Josh Allen.
Okay, that's good.
Though the thing is, it's the same with the MVP debate. Like, I'm not arguing anyone who's saying Lamar. I'm like, hey, I know all your points and they're all valid. And I just, by margin, by a hair, I think Josh Allen's been slightly better.
I
But
think the person I feel most bad for is Joe Burrow. Like, he's playing at a
yeah,
similar level, and it's
he
like,
is.
okay, there's only two spots. Sorry, buddy, you can't get in.
Yeah, and record just kind of trumps him out of it. Like, you're not making playoffs. It's kind of an
Exactly.
immediate excuse from the room,
Running
unfortunately.
back, Saquon Barkley.
I mean, it's the obvious
Yeah,
one. I mean,
clearly.
yeah, Derrick Henry, I guess, and this like, but not. No, you can't make a serious case. It's Saquon.
Yeah, it's Saquon. Fullback is just Kyle Juszczyk. Like, it's just
Dude, I forgot about the fullback, but I'll just
Patrick
stack on top of you on
Ricard.
that one too.
Okay,
CJ Ham.
wide receiver. There's three spots for me.
Oh,
The
three.
first two was obvious. It was Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. My third wide receiver. This was before week 17. It was Terry McLaurin, but then he
Mhm.
had a stinker. AJ Terrell locked him up, and it made me look very bad. So now I have to take him out off the first team, and I think I'm going to go with AJ Brown as my first teamer with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Okay. I think so I actually only did two spots here, so I'm brainstorming who I'm gonna go with a third. But
You have CD.
is
You have
CD, how many games
BTJ.
has he missed now?
I think he's missed only two. I mean, I'm pretty sure last time I checked, he was like top 5 in receiving yards.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got probably the best case. I mean, like you could argue Brian Thomas Jr., I guess.
CD Lamb
Unless I
is
say that
third in
quietly.
receiving yards.
Yeah.
The reason I went with AJ Brown was because AJ Brown has 1,079 yards on 97 targets.
Yeah.
CD Lamb has 152 targets and has 1,194.
Yeah, but so he's got lower quality targets there too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Chase, Jefferson, CD. I had Chase and Jefferson there, but I think CD's the guy for me. But AJ Brown, I again wouldn't argue it you at all there. And they're a run centric offense who's had a lot of big leads, and the passing volume has tailed off. You know what? I just talked myself into AJ Brown. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Second team is going to be interesting because you have Terry,
Yeah,
you have CD,
Mhm.
you have Amon-Ra St. Brown,
Brian
but
Thomas
you also
Jr.
have Brian Thomas Jr.,
Yeah.
who he could very well be an all-pro, but it'd probably come at the expense of my boy Terry McLaurin, and I don't want to see it.
And I just want to shout out like how Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors have both done this with like Brian Thomas had Trevor Lawrence, who was, while he had his many flaws, he was an excellent deep ball thrower this year. But like a lot, this production has continued with Mac Jones and like Malik Neighbors. We don't even need to get into what he's working with over there, but like these guys are producing like top, like they're both top 7 in receiving yards, and Neighbors has a few games missed too. I think 2 games missed, but with no quarterback, like it's phenomenal what they're doing right now. I mean, yeah.
And BTJ, I think, at first he came bursting onto the scene and we're thinking, is he just a deep threat? But with Mac Jones, he's become a great receiver in the screen game. He's working in the slot more and he's getting open. It's like, no,
catches
this
over the middle and runs. Like he's a full route tree guy. And that's what like I think the film guys like myself included during the draft, like people were labeling him this deep guy who just, he ran a 4.3, like he's this 6'3", he's another DJ Chark or whatever, just goes deep. Like, no, he's got a full route tree. He's really, really, really good. He ran straight a lot because they could do that at LSU, but he showed when he didn't just run straight that he can break. He's got some explosion. He's got good feet. He can get off press. He's the full package, and he's showing that next year is going to be insane. He might be a late first round fantasy pick, honestly.
Yeah, I have him in my dynasty. My wide
So do
receivers
I.
are pretty stacked. I
Yeah.
have AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin. Um, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. I have Brian Thomas, who I traded for. I traded for Brian Thomas Jr. I gave up Drake London to get Brian Thomas Jr. So I
Solid.
have, I
Yeah.
have BTJ, Marv, McLaurin, AJ. I have T Higgins as well. I have Khalil Shakir on my bench. So like my wide receivers are
You're
pretty
loaded.
stacked. Yeah, I have like
Nice.
amazing wide receivers. A tight end. This is between Brock Bowers and George Kittle for me. I think George Kittle has been more efficient on his targets. I think Brock Bowers has just been fed more, but he did break the rookie receiving yards record by a tight end and receptions record. I gave the nod to Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers is the first team All-Pro.
I did the same thing, but mine was between McBride and Bowers. Kittle right outside those two for me, but I don't hold the touchdowns at all against McBride. I think that's more of a scheme thing than a McBride just not being good as soon as they get near the end zone thing. Although I am saying that a day after the ball doinked off his helmet in the end zone, but more of
he had a touchdown in that game
there.
though.
Yeah, he did. He did. His first receiving of the year. But I just think as a weapon, McBride has been absolutely phenomenal this year. Unfortunately for him, Brock Bowers has, I think, been a tiny bit better. So, yeah, and Brock Bowers did it without a quarterback. So,
for offensive line play, I'm just going to speed through these.
Yeah.
Left tackle, Jordan Mailata.
Same.
Left guard, Quinn Miners. I had
Joe Tooney for me.
Well, center, I had Creed Humphrey.
Same.
Right guard, I had Chris Lindstrom.
Kevin Zeitler for me.
Yep, that's a great pick. And right tackle, I had Penei Sewell.
Lane Johnson.
Yep, and that's, hey, I can't even, Lane Johnson is one of those ones.
Yep, I had the Eagles duo at tackle, and then I had the Chiefs left guard and center. And then if I had, I was thinking about Sewell too, and that would have then given me two Lions. So pretty congregated the offensive line guys to just a few teams there.
Defensively, for the edge rushers, the two spots, I have Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, who I'm very tempted to replace. I am.
I could tempt you a bit more there, but yeah, I did Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. I think that Micah Parsons is just the better player. I think that he wins more. He doesn't rely as much on disruptive teammates, and Watt wreaks havoc. Like, he's got those long arms. He's a cleanup sack monster. As soon as the quarterback's scrambling, he's so quick to get to him and force fumbles and swat balls. But just from in terms of like high leverage moments, beat your man. This left tackle is pass setting, right tackle is pass setting. Can you beat him? I think that I trust Micah a considerable amount more than TJ Watt in those situations.
TJ Watt is in top 10 in pressures this year amongst edge rushers, but he has forced 7 forced fumbles, which is by far the most in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's why I had him here at edge. There's a lot of deserving edge players. You have Jonathan Grenard with the Vikings, who's playing really, really freaking well. Micah Parsons in his limited amount of games. I think Jared Verse is in the conversation. Like, he's been an all-pro level player as a rookie for the Rams.
How many has Parsons missed? He's played 12. He's missed 5.
10 or 11 games. Yeah,
he's played
missed
12. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's top 5 in pressures, even though he's missed that many games. Like, he's by far and away like the best edge rusher in the league right now, in my opinion. Probably Myles Garrett's better, but Michael Parsons is just that good.
Aiden Hutchinson, just shout out. He was well on track to make this list if he hadn't got hurt too.
He was going to win DPOY like easily.
Yeah, he was.
Like, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Interior defensive lineman Chris Jones leads the NFL in pressures.
Same.
I think he should be defensive player of the year. That's my take. Defensive tackles, they don't get the love because of the sack numbers, but Chris Jones, I mean, he's just the most disruptive defender in the game right now. You can argue on one of the league's best defenses on a dynasty, and he's not getting rewarded for it. So,
let me guess your next pick for defense interior. I think you went Jalen Carter.
I was thinking about it.
Okay. I went
I
Jalen Carter.
That's a great pick. I could argue Zach Allen, who's been
Okay.
amazing this year.
Cam
PFF
Hayward.
PFF doesn't love him, but
Hmm.
Zach Allen has been disruptive when I watched him. Cam Hayward was my second interior
That
defensive lineman.
okay. That was who I
Yes,
was thinking about between him and
yeah.
Jalen Carter. But
Jalen Carter would make my second team.
yeah, yeah, and I would put Cam in my second team. So just flip him around there.
Linebackers, I think the first two are obvious: Zach Bond and Fred Warner. That's 1 and 2 for
Yeah,
me.
I didn't think you were gonna have Fred Warner just because of how the Niners have done. But yeah, I think
But he's just been so great.
he's the best. He's
Yes.
the meta. He is what you want your Mike linebacker to be in 2024. He does everything well. He covers like a safety, but plays the run like a linebacker. His hips are like a DB. Everything about him is phenomenal.
Now, this other linebacker spot, the third linebacker spot, I was debating between a couple names. I landed on Jordan Brooks, but I think I might switch it, and I think I'm going with Blake Cashman. I think there's a lot of linebackers. You got Blake Cashman, you got Jordan Brooks, you got Ernest Jones, you have Don Henley, Bobby Wagner. I mean, PFF loves him, man. And he does make plays in the run. It's just in coverage. He's just not good. But yeah, my third linebacker, it's going to be Blake Cashman. It's going to be Blake Cashman.
Oh, yeah. So again, I put two linebackers here. I don't know why my brain's thinking like nickel, like we're like that's nickel is basically the new base where it's like 60% of snaps are nickel. But I had Zach Bond, Fred Warner, man, like Roquan is someone who normally I would say as well, but he has not been up to par this year.
It's not been an elite year for him.
It hasn't. Man. I love Nakobe Dean's tape. Like I might go with Nakobe Dean just based on even when not targeted, I think that he carries the most impact as a linebacker with just how fast he can drop and open his hips, and he takes crossers away to the point where like quarterbacks just immediately read off the crosser to the next one. He hasn't been tested that much, I don't think, at least in like they test him on stick routes and little things where they get him. He's smaller, and so you can kind of like leverage him off your route at the top of the route. But I think just in disrupting game plans, in disrupting passing concepts, he's really excelled. And so I'm going to go with him.
I like that pick out of the box. I like it.
Yeah.
Corner position. So how they have it is it's two corners and then one nickel back. So my two corners were Pastor Tan and Trent McDuffie. And my nickelback, I'm sorry I'm not going to have him first team. He would be my second team. It's going to be Devon Witherspoon over Marlon Humphrey. I know Marlon Humphrey's been great. Devon Witherspoon has been the best run defending nickelback in the NFL. He makes so many plays. Yes.
Yeah, he's such a playmaker, and he's obviously a tape guy. Like he sniffs things out, screens like the second the ball snapped, he's leveraging himself to dip his shoulder underneath the blocker. Like he's game ready. It's insane.
Humphrey has made plays. He has more interceptions. He had that one against the Bengals that led them back in that game. But he would be a second teamer for me. I had Cooper DeJean originally in my second team over Marlon Humphrey, but
I don't think he played enough. He kind of came on midseason.
So I was like, no, I got to give respect to Marlon Humphrey. So Devon Witherspoon for me, I think he's going to be my nickelback.
Yeah, so I had Surtain as well, Witherspoon as well in the nickel, but I think I also had an out of the box corner, and this is someone who I believe he's tied right now. He might have just lost it, but he's tied for most interceptions, Byron Murphy Jr. He has been so good. And like I think I'm speaking unbiased here, but Vikings don't have great safety play. Like Bynum is solid. He you don't want him deep in quarters. You don't want him on an island guarding or covering space, really. His range is decent. It's not that good. You don't want him really as your deep middle safety. You want him ideally it helps because the Vikings linebackers are so fast and they can cover, so they bump and run, and they're able to stick closer to their man typically, which gives him a little bit more leeway, buying him a little bit more leeway. But Harrison Smith he's slowed down a lot. He's still impactful. He's still a plus player, but he's not what he used to be. And Flores is blitzing all the time. And Byron Murphy is guarding the best player on most Sundays. He plays a good amount of man. Lots of times he's left on an island, and he has held up so well. There's a ridiculous call this past week, pass interference call on him when he was playing excellent coverage. But I think the Vikings have to pay him. I think he's more responsible than anyone on the Vikings defense for their defensive success. If he goes down, you're going to see a very leaky secondary. Gilmore has been up and down lately, a little bit more down than up. He might be playing hurt right now, but the way that Murphy has played it's really moved me. And I don't think there's very many other corners who are as consistent as he's been this year. And he's been producing turnovers too. A lot of them have been kind of just bad throws that are thrown right to him. But yeah,
That's what you need sometimes.
Right now.
That's what you need.
It happens. Yeah.
My safeties, I have Xavier McKinney, one of the league leaders in interceptions.
Same.
And my other safety spot, I thought about Kyle Hamilton.
That's where I went.
I feel really bad about not having Humphrey or Hamilton in my first team. I thought about Brian Branch. Originally, I went with Brian Branch, but I'm going to go with Kirby Joseph. I think Kirby Joseph is like the most underrated elite safety in the league. Like we all think about Brian Branch on that Lions defense, and Kirby Joseph's reputation is like this dirty player who like has these mean hits, but no, like, yeah, he's one of the best safeties in the league. And that safety tandem, really, Brian Branch plays more as like a nickel back for their defense anyway. So, Kirby Joseph is just amazing. He's a ball hawk, and I'm going to go with him, opposite of Xavier McKinney on this all-pro team.
Yeah, I did McKinney as well. I think the Packers' non-existent pass rush has left him in a lot of like non-advantageous situations where he's out on an island. He has to find a receiver to stick to, maintain over the top leverage for much longer than he would have otherwise. And he's done a really good job with that. And he's got maybe him and Javon Holland have, I think, the most range at the safety spot in the league. And then Kyle Hamilton at my second spot there. Kirby there's a very strong case there, and like I think you could argue either way. But I think Hamilton's just his head around the game, and he seems like he's ready for everything. He's always in the right leverage spot. He's always like he knows what's coming before it happens. He's making big plays against the run. He's making big plays as a blitzer. He's making big plays in coverage. You can run every single coverage with him. He can play any spot. He can rotate down and play in the box. He can play over the top as your deep safety in cover one. He can play quarters and match a deep post. He can do like anything. And because of that versatility and just his IQ of the game, I think he takes that spot for me.
For kicker, I had Chris Boswell. That's the last one.
I had Brandon Aubrey.
I like that.
He's the bomb, the new kicker, the bomber kicker guy who just comes in, boots these things that makes everyone's jaw drop. How can you not give that guy it?
Yeah, he's the best kicker in the league.
And I had Michael Dixon at punter. I think he's the best punter in the league. So
nice. I didn't do the punters. I didn't do them. Tommy Townsend, Texans. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Torrey Taylor, Bears, most yards, whatever. No, but yeah, this was good. The all-pro teams. I feel bad about not having certain players like Jalen Carter. I think really belongs on the first team, all-pro. Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey. It's just limited number of spots. I hope that this year the NFL at least gets most of these all-pro rights, because I feel like for the most part, whenever these things come out, there's like a couple that were like, oh, what the hell? Like Bobby Wagner's made it like 3 years in a row now, and they're just like,
but sometimes it's like voter fatigue or whatever. But like voter fatigue shouldn't be a real thing. It should be something that like voters are trained to recognize and then not like actually partake in. I do want to shout out, though, a linebacker who's been phenomenal. He doesn't have the snaps to really qualify here, but Edgerrin Cooper on the Packers has been incredible coverage, run defense. I think if his snap count was a little bit higher, I think he'd have a really strong case. Also, Jack Campbell, Detroit, another do-it-all linebacker, very athletic and coverage fluid hips. So,
and that's going to do it for this episode of the Weekly Blitz, the last episode of 2024. We'll be back for the new year to recap week 18, give our playoff predictions, and much more. We're heading into the meat of the NFL season, the best part of it. Jackson, that's going to do it. We're almost done with the NFL season.
Yeah, man. Playoffs could never come sooner. I'm ready.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like the episode, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.